Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. It feels so good to be caught up. We are finally caught up to the standard format slash what we're supposed to be working on right now with things on the channel. So everything from this point forward will be fresh, recent content. So I'm sure you guys are very, very happy about that. We're actually going to be talking about the new set and the decks that came out of there, the decks that are playable out of there. And I know a lot of you had questions on whether I'm going to do standard or premium on my channel or both. Or for right now, I'm going to do standard and I'm going to kind of see how premium pans out because it seems like people like premium less and want to see that less. So I'm definitely doing the standard decks first, and then maybe if I get like a lot of feedback and people really want premium, or I have like a Patreon that requests it, a Patreon request for premium decks or something like that, then I will definitely do one. But yeah, with that being said, you guys can, check all that out in the description down below. But let's get right into the deck. So standard is our reboot. So you guys see I clicked the G zone. I'm so used to having a G zone that I was about to talk about a G zone when there is none. So we're actually just resetting back to the really beginning of the game. There are a couple differences for old players. If you're a new player, first of all, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you found the channel. I do like a lot of card fight based videos. I do like deck profiles and interviews with top players and vlogs and all that good stuff. So happy you found the channel. Welcome. And then the second thing that I wanted to say is that if you're a new player and you don't know all the stuff about premium, you don't know like strides, extra deck, I don't know, Legion, break ride, limit break, don't worry about all that. You can just play standard and be pretty fine because there's two different formats now. So you don't have to know how to play all the formats. You can just play this one if you want. And then later, if you get a little more experience into the game, you want a little more depth, you can try to go explore premium if that's what you would like to do. But yeah, let's first talk about standard. So out of this most first and new set, we're going to call this set V1, which will be Vanguard Series 1 or V Series 1. So V Series is our new reboot set. So let's talk about our grade 3s. We have 4 King of Knights Alfred and 4 Soul Saver Dragon. So what King of Knights Alfred does is a pretty simplistic ability. Something to mention here is that our grade 3s now have a 13k base if we're in a force deck. So this is a force deck, so usually they have a 13k base in a force deck. You have 10k grade 2s, and then you have like 8k grade 1s, which is pretty cool. So everything has gone up in base power from if you're an old player, everything has gone up in base power. And then you also get imaginary gift, which is something new too, which means that when you ride, you actually ride something on your Vanguard circle, you will get an imaginary gift to your hand, and then you can give, each imaginary gift is different, and we'll talk about it through the 4 videos because you get to see all the different imaginary gifts. So this is a force deck. So we have 4 King of Knights Alfred. Its ability is activation on the Vanguard's skill once per turn. So when it's on the Vanguard circle during your main phase, you can counterblast 1 and search your deck for up to 1 Blaster Blade card and call it to your rearguard circle, and then your Blaster Blade that you called will get plus 5,000 power, and then you shuffle your deck. So you get to call out a Blaster Blade from your deck, free +1 advantage for just a counterblast, pretty good. And then also it has a continuous ability that says during your turn, if you have a Blaster Blade on rearguard circle, this unit gets plus 10,000 power. So you don't even have to put your force to Vanguard immediately when you ride this card, just because your Vanguard doesn't really need it if you're on King of Knights Alfred, because it would be like there's a force on your Vanguard as long as you have a Blaster Blade on the field. So then we have 4 Soul Saver Dragon. We want to ride this card later when it starts getting later in the game. This card's effect is very, very good, but only towards the late game as like a finisher. So Soul Saver Dragon's effect that you prefer to really use if your opponent's at 5 damage is act on the Vanguard's circle, cost Soul Blast 5. So you pay Soul Blast 5, so you take 5 cards from your soul, you put them into the drop zone. and then 6 of your units get plus 15,000 power until the end of the turn. So it makes all of your units really, really huge and makes it really hard to block. And then it has a secondary Vanguard ability. It says when this unit attacks, you may soul charge one, which is putting a card from your deck into your soul. So this helps you build your soul for the first effect if you've already used it or if you're just not there yet. And so that's very, very good because it allows you to use Soul Saver like max 2 times a game. I've never used it like 3 times a game. I think you'll deck out before you use it 3 times a game, but you can definitely use it 2 times a game. Then we have 4 Blaster Blade. Blaster Blades, our main grade 2 that we ride into or try to ride into, if not Akane, but we really want to ride into Blaster Blade because of its Vanguard abilities. So it has a first Vanguard ability, which is continuous on the Vanguard circle. If you have 4 more rear guards, this unit gets +1 critical. So you can swing on your opponent in the early game, and for the most part, they won't guard it just because it'll be too big with a booster. And then you will be able to attack with a high number that your opponent won't guard with an extra critical. And if you check a critical, then it does 3 damage to your opponent in the early game, which is absolutely insane. Like getting your opponent to that high of damage, not to mention the rear guards that you have on the board. It'll be really difficult for your opponent to deal with. And usually your opponent just takes this attack, in my experience, playing the deck. So then it has a secondary ability that says when this unit is placed, you counterblast 1 and soul blast 1 on Vanguard or rearguard circle, and then you choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row and you can retire it. So this is, if you're an old player, this is very different from the old Blaster Blade, because the old Blaster Blade, when it got placed on Vanguard circle, could retire anything, and then when it got placed on rearguard circle, it could only kill a front row. Or, sorry, it could only kill a grade 2 or higher card. So this card just kills anything, but it kills something in the front row only, so you can't really snipe your opponent's back row. They've left that for like a cog row only option this time around. And so you just want to, in this Royal Paladin deck, make columns, beat your opponent's face in, and hope that they can't block. So then we have 4 High Dog Breeder Akane. Again, if you're an old player, this used to be at 8k, so now it's 10, and it has a way better effect because it's not counterblast 2. So it has a Vanguard rearguard ability that says when it's placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle, counterblast 1, and then search your deck for 1 Pongo card, which would be this card right here, and then you call it to your rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. And then it has a secondary ability that says continuous. During the battle, this unit is boosted by a High Beast card. This unit gets plus 3,000 power. So the only High Beasts that we run really are Wingull and Pongo. So you really just want to be boosting with them and not, Marin and not Allen when it comes to Akane, just so that you can get those numbers. The higher numbers, the better. And Standard is a very simplistic format, so it's all about just, making numbers and using your effects wisely. Then we have 4 Conjurer of Mithril. The reason why we run 4 of these and 4 Akane is because in the early game, we always want to, on turn 2, just rush our opponent and kind of play like some kind of board without using a bunch of cards from our hand. And the best way to do that is by using abilities. So if we play Conjurer of Mithril on the rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1 and soul blast 1 when it's placed from hand, and then we can search our deck for 1 grade 2 card, call it to rearguard circle, and shuffle our deck. It sucks that it only calls a grade 2 and not grade 2 or lower, because that would be really, really baller, but it only really helps you get another grade 2, so you only want to call it when both of your front row circles are open, and then you have a grade 2 target to call. Sometimes when you have 2 counterblasts, you can just call Conjurer of Mithril, and then you can call Akane, and then Akane can call Pongo, which is just a free rear guards for using your costs, so really good. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Little Sage Marin. If you guys are old players, you know that this card also used to be an 8k base, but it also used to be a vanilla, so it didn't have an ability, but now it does. And it has a rearguard once per turn ability that says when your other rearguard is placed in the same column as this unit, counterblast 1, draw a card, and this unit gets plus 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So this card can become 11k attacker, or an 11k booster if you play something in the same column as it, and you also get to draw a card just for the cost of counterblast 1, which is really, really cheap. Then we have 4 Pongo. Its rearguard skill is when it's placed, if you have another unit in the same column as it, you can soul charge 1, or you have to soul charge 1 if you have another unit in the same column as this unit. And then if the card that you soul charge is a trigger unit, this unit gets plus 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So it rewards you for soul charging a trigger, but if you don't soul charge a trigger, it just gives you free soul towards probably Soul Saver or Conjurer of Mithril. We only really use Conjurer of Mithril like once or twice a game, so all your soul is mainly going to soul savers, so you're just building up a lot of soul for that, so that you can end your opponent as fast as possible. And then we have 4 Knight Squire Allen. Knight Squire Allen's rearguard skill is when it's placed, counterboss 1, choose one card with choose up to 1 card with a grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from your hand and call it to rearguard circle. If you call it a card, you draw a card, and this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So another card that becomes an 11k attacker or 11k booster. And if you're grade 3, you can literally just use this ability, call anything that you already would have called from your hand, and you get to draw a card for it instead, which is really good. Then we run 1 Wingle, finishing out our grade 1 lineup. We really just run it for the chance that if we happen to get it in the early game, we can use it with the Blaster Blade play. But it's really not useful besides if it's in a column with a Blaster Blade or an Akane. Akane gets 3k when it's boosted by Wingle. But as for Wingle's actual effect, it's not useful unless you have Blaster Blade, so we do run less of this card because it's more situational. Wingle's ability is continuous on the rearguard circle. During your turn, all of your Blaster Blades in the same column as this unit get plus 5k. So it's a plus 5,000 power boost. It's nothing to sneeze at, definitely, but it is a lot more situational because it only does that to Blaster Blade. So then we're getting into our new starters. All of our new starters pretty much have the same effect, which is when we ride on it, we draw a card. So they don't have Forerunner like all of the starters did before, where they get to ride back to rearguard circle and then they do something. All of these are just 6k starters, and then they have this draw card effect when you ride on top of them, which sometimes really helps you, and sometimes it's just really good. So we're thankful that our starter has an ability at all, because it could have just been like the beginning of the game where we had a starter that didn't do anything and didn't move back. So that's really good. And then we have, for our triggers, we have 8 crit, 4 draw, and 4 heal. The typical lineup, now that our triggers have changed from crit, stand, draw, heal to crit, front, draw, heal, and front triggers only go to Excel clans. So since this is a Force clan, they only have the option of getting criticals, draw triggers, and heal triggers. So typical, we run 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal, because these are the only ones that are out really right now. So then we run 4 Bringer of Good Luck Epina. Obviously something to look at in the deck now is the guard stages. So if you're an old player, if you're a new player, this won't affect you much because this is what you're learning. But if you're an old player, this will affect you because you need to learn the new guard stages. So grade 2s with abilities or good abilities or abilities at all usually have 5k shield, and that's the same as what they used to have. But grade 2s without an ability, like a vanilla, usually have 10k shield, which is something that new players will have to get used to, or sorry, old players will have to get used to. Also, all the grade 1s have 10k shield, so that's something that old players have to get used to. And then all of our grade 0 triggers, our crit triggers have 15k shield. Our draw triggers have 5,000 shield unless it's a PG draw, which is also new. And then we also have our heal trigger, which is going to be guarding for 20,000 shield. And if we're not playing in premium, we don't have to worry about G Guardian, so this is the biggest guard that we have. So we do run 2 vanilla crits, but they are the new standard crits. Then we run 4 Flash Sealed Assault. So Assault is our perfect guard, basically our Sentinel, that is now a draw trigger, which is a new mechanic that they've kind of added because they've never done this before. But they've decided to combine draw triggers and Sentinels into one and the same, which is kind of cool because if you lose a PG to the damage zone, you'll still be getting a draw off of it, and you'll be hitting a draw trigger, giving 10,000 power to your Vanguard and drawing a card. But then if you check it, you automatically get a card to draw so that you have a card to discard for Assault. So it's pretty good because if you check Assault, it's just like you already have the means to PG. It's not like you check it and then you can't use anything to PG or you can't guard efficiently. It's just very, very good. By the way, I know that my community and everyone else has been calling these perfect draws, but if you're on my channel, I would be calling them Sentinel triggers. So just be prepared for that. I like that name a lot better, and I'd rather call them Sentinel triggers. So this is our Sentinel trigger for this deck. And then we're also running 4 heals. The vanilla heal from standard, just like I mentioned, it has 20,000 shield. It heals us a damage when we check it, and not much to say beyond that. But let's get right into the games here. We're going to be loading up our games. And it's a lot quicker than my old FutureFight videos too, just because we had to go through a G zone. The game is sometimes very long and complicated, but I will say standard games, depending on what they are, can be a little longer as well. It just really depends. So we're playing against Kagero in this game, and so we do the new mulligan to put our draw cards and then put cards at the bottom and draw, then shuffle. For our first damage check, we get a draw. We ride Blaster Blade, and then we call Conjurer of Mithril to get out another Blaster Blade. And then we call Allen and Flogel just to have 4 rear guards. We attack for 18 with 2 crit. Our opponent takes 2 damage, and then we attack for 15, and our opponent guards it. So they go into Berserk Dragon, they ride it, they use the skill to kill both of our front rows with both Berserks, and then they attack us. We get a draw trigger, but they also get a heal trigger. And then we ride, we get Imaginary Gift Force, we give it to our rearguard circle. We call a Blaster Blade using Alfred, and then we call a Kane and get a Pongal. We attack Vanguard, he no guards, we get a draw trigger, and then we attack for 40k, and he no guards. He rides and does Force as well because Kagero is also Force. He attacks with Dragonic Overlord. We no guard just because we think that when you let a Dragonic Overlord hit, your opponent's actually minusing in order to attack you again. So we wanted him to have less cards in his hand so that we can do a Soul Saver play next turn and try to style on our opponent in a way. So we use Force when we re-ride Soul Saver, but we realize that we don't have 5 Soul until we Soul Charge this time. So our opponent guards us for a 2 to pass, we get a crit trigger, all to rear guard, and then our opponent takes the damage and gets a draw trigger and a heal trigger, which is pretty good for them. They just don't heal. But our opponent plays the card, they play Bar, and then they use the skill to retire our Akane, and then they attack us for 28. And we looked at the cards in our hand, and we wouldn't be able to guard everything, so we just no guard. So I was thinking right here, the thing is, if we use a 15k shield, we would have to use a 15k to block for no guard, or for a 1 to pass, so we basically just no guard it. We get a 6 damage heal, so that's pretty cool. We get 10,000 power to Vanguard. He restands with Dragonic Overlord's ability. We block that, and then we block Berserk Lord with 2 cards, and then we block the Nahalem attack with 1 card. So we're able to survive for 1 more turn. Our opponent just decides to concede because we would just next turn draw a card and then ride Soul Saver and call the other card to the rearguard circle, and then use Soul Saver's effect to give 15k to everything. So he wouldn't be able to guard even if he's 6 damage healed, and so he just decided to concede and have that be game. So something that I will mention is now that we're back at the beginning of the game, now that the game has reset, the game is a lot more trigger reliant than it was per se in standard, or per se in premium. It is a lot easier to sack your opponent and your opponent just not be able to come back because you sacked them so hard. But game 2, we're playing against Kagero again because it is the most popular standard deck. I feel like everyone and their moms likes to play this deck. So our opponent checks a critical on their first check. We ride Blaster Blade, we call Conjurer of Mithril, and then we use the skill to call Pongal. So like you just saw, we called literally 3 cards off of playing 1 card just because we had 2 counterblasts. So that was really, really good. And it kind of punishes Kagero for doing a lot of damage to us because we can just use our counterblasts to call out units. So his bar doesn't get 5k because it only gets 5k if he has more rearguards than us. He checks a heal trigger, gives it to rearguard, and then when we check a heal trigger, we also heal off 1 damage as well. So then we counterblast 1, soul blast 1, call in Akane, use Akane's skill to call Pongal. Pongal soul charges, and then we attack for 21. Our opponent guards. We attack for 21. We get a crit trigger and a grade 1, so our opponent takes 2 damage. And then we attack Vanguard, and then our opponent rides, uses Force, Soul Blast to have his Vanguard get 10k. We guard for a 2 to pass here. He checks a critical trigger, giving all to rearguard, and a critical trigger, giving all to rearguard. So I was like, wow, what a sack. And I couldn't survive both, so I just decided to take one. Thankfully, we end up 6 damage healing again in this game. But he did crit me, so I guess like it just nullified his crit, basically. So we ride, and then we call 2. We attack for 31. Our opponent guards. We attack for 21. Our opponent no guards. We check a draw trigger, power to rearguard and draw, and then we attack, and he can't guard that because he only has 1 card in his hand. So or sorry, he only has 2 cards in his hand, but really only 1 real card to guard with because the other one was a waterfall. So we end up winning the game 2 as well, thanks to these lucky 6 damage heals I'm getting. I think it's just because when you play Roa Paladin against Kagero, you're Aichi and the other person is Kai, and you already know that means that you're going to lose, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. If you don't watch the Vanguard show, don't worry about it. It's a lame joke. But we're actually playing against the Royal Paladin mirror match this time. We take a damage, we use a Kane skill to call Pongal, and then we attack, get a draw trigger. And then we attack for 10. And then we attack for 31. To Vanguard, we get a heal trigger, power heal, and then 35 to Vanguard. He takes it as well. He uses his Allen skill to call a Kane and his Akane skill to call a Pongal. So he gets more free advantage off of that as well. And then he attacks our Vanguard for 24. We take it, he gets a critical trigger. And an Allen, we take 2, we don't get a damage trigger, so we're just going to eat the Vanguard attack because that's too big to try to attempt to guard. We do ride into Soul Saver. We use Pongal skill, Akane to call Pongal, and then Pongal to Soul Charge. We Soul Charge the trigger, so Pongal gets 5k. Then we Soul Blast 5 to be able to give plus 15k to everything. We attack for 35. Our opponent blocks, and then we attack with Vanguard. And we were hoping for a crit, but we got a draw trigger instead, which kind of sucks, but we do have a PG in our hand, so that's good. The more PGs, the better. Our opponent also rides Soul Saver and uses Soul Saver's ability to Soul Blast 5 and have all of his units get plus 15k. And he still has a grip in his hand too, which basically means he has a large hand, so we shouldn't really underestimate him, but he doesn't check a crit, which is really good. Then we take 1 damage and we PG the other one as well. So then we re-ride Soul Saver again. We give the Force to rear guard, and we Soul Charge 1. And then we attack for 31. He guards. We attack for 21. He guards for a 2 to pass with his intercept. And then we get another draw trigger, giving power to rear guard and drawing. And then we attack for 48. And I guess he just couldn't guard it or didn't want to attempt to guard it. So he was 13. If he intercepted, that would be 18, 23, 33, 38, 38, 43. Yeah, so I was attacking for 48. So I guess he looked at his whole hand and he was like, even if I intercept, I can't guard. So that just ends up being game and he couldn't guard it. But yeah, with that being said, that has been the standard Royal new V-Series FutureFight Vanguard video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a thumbs up on the video. It helps a lot more than you guys might think. Also, be sure to subscribe to stay tuned for future content and to support the channel. Also, if you click the bell button next to the subscription button after you subscribe, it gives you a notification every time one of my videos go live. And then also check out our social medias and the links down below, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I like to give you guys a lot of updates on what I'm doing with the channel on Facebook. So I know that's an often thing, so you guys can look into Facebook if you want to see my updates or my messages about the channel. And then also, if you're interested in supporting the channel a little more beyond liking and subscribing, then you can check out our Patreon. Like I said before, there's a lot of, interesting things on there. There's contests, there are requests, there's you get to join the Discord, the channel support Discord, and all this stuff. You get a lot of benefits from supporting the channel. So if that's something that you guys have thought about, you guys can check out the Patreon or the merch store to buy Cardfight Empire merch. And with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.